Right, so it's time to begin the panel discussion of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have insights for Indian fintechs on achieving secure and agile innovation. We would like to call upon on stage Mr. Naseem Halder, CISO and CTO ACO. Ladies and gentlemen, his expertise lies in developing and implementing comprehensive security strategies to protect organizations from cyber threats. He successfully devised and implemented transformational enterprise security strategies while improving enterprise processes and building top teams. He also possesses a deep understanding of the latest security technologies, threats, and best practices. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a next speaker, Ms. Ritu Verma, Compliance Officer, Pine Labs. Ms. Ritu Verma is an accomplished and compliance professional with a wealth of expertise in payments, fintech, and banking compliance. Her extensive knowledge encompasses both the functional and technological aspects of compliance, allowing her to excel in her role as the compliance officer at Pine Labs. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the next Ms. Madhuri Gothoskar, Director, BFSI Compliance PhonePe. She has over 2 decades of experience in compliance, spanning capital markets, private banking, portfolio management, investment advisory, lending, stockbroking, participating and investment banking, compliance oversight across multiple entities, bank like NBFC and wealth management, unique set of experience at leading MNCs, guiding over regulation application to business, extensive reach of products like mutual funds, equity, insurance, FX, DP, lending, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist, we have Mr. Umamaheswara Rao, M, CISO and VP SwingPay Fintech. He's an accomplished and highly committed IT professional with over 1.5 decades of experience in core information security, experience in designing, implementing and compliance of global standards, regulations, data security, cloud security, AWS security, business continuity planning, implementation, training and testing, network design and implementation for globally reputed customers of an Indian IT major. Our next panelist, we have Mr. Kush, Kaushik, co-founder and head of customer success Squad Automation with over 15 years of auditing experience in ISO 27001 and multiple other standards. He have conducted over 700 audits across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, an experienced lead auditor with 15 years of experience. Well, the session will be moderated by Ms. Minu, Executive Editor, Cyber Media. Now I request the moderator to please begin this session, and let's welcome the panelists with a huge round of applause, and it's going to be really interesting. So over to the moderator.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to spend much more time on the topic because I think the experts, right from Sunil to Navneethan to Ganeshan, has really given insight to all of us. And we have an eclectic meet over here in terms of the people from the industry who are experts in this space. So, maybe getting an experience and understanding from the people who are doing this day in and day out, and to understand the challenges, how you can navigate these challenges. The takeaway would be maybe to understand what could be the best practices that we need to follow, and how are we seeing this industry also shape further, So maybe I could start with Ritu first, if I could ask you. So achieving compliance is not just a matter of ticking boxes, but requires a deep understanding of the underlying risk and the ability to implement appropriate controls. So if you could share your thought on how can we strike a balance, and achieve this and do it like in the right way that you're expected to do it.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I think a very pertinent question from fintech standpoint. The way I look at it is compliance folks run on that rope, that's very fine line, where they're balancing business and regulators at the same time. It is very important for compliance folks to know that they are helping all the business folks to run the business in the right manner. At the same time, they are also protecting the organization around the regulations which are being laid down by the regulator. And hence it is critical to understand that compliance has to flow from the strategy of the organization. It is not something which is a tick box activity, that if I have done 1, 2, 3 activities without understanding that what this needs to be done for, the culture of compliance will not flow in the organization itself. So it is very important that board of directors understand the importance of compliance in any organization, so that it gets implemented to the ground in an effective manner and not just as a tick box activity. Because if an organization has to run in a very long way, right, that requires that all its activities are being conducted in compliant manner.
So Naseem, if I could just ask you also to just add to that from a security perspective also, that where do you see that as a challenge?
Okay, I would take it one step back, and if I ask one question to all of my friends here, okay, if any of we are seeing a Tesla car, what we see, right? I'm sure most of we are going to answer it like there is a car which is having an automation feature, right? I would consider this thing in a different way. I feel it's a computer who got 4 wheels, right? So that is what we are going to change in the technology side. So if you are driving a car, you are into a car, so you have to think about the safety, the trust of the customer, what they are going to provide, right? So when we are talking about the trust of a customer, it's nothing but a compliance, right? Basically, we are benchmarking something that this should be the bare minimum requirement for each and everything. And I would say, she has very rightly said that the requirement should be very much clear. It should be very much understanding by the top level, starting from board of directors to the business owners, right? They have to. Okay, is it better? Yeah. So from that level, it should be very much clear to each and everything. And compliance and security. It's a I think Navneethan and Mr. Romani, both of them, given very very good example that it should be peer to peer. It should act like brother and sister, and should act it should act in the same direction. So compliance is not like a checkbox or tick mark. That is what all of we are agreed, and it should be as per the business requirement. We have to see how this bare minimum requirement, or right, so that benchmarking should be available. And in today's world, especially in BFSI or Fintech, the compliance cost, I would say, in terms of not only in terms of penalty, I would say the reputational loss is very very high. So people need to focus on those side as well.
So, Mr. Mahesh, if I could also ask you to add, your perspective from the fintech community. So, how do you think, you can strike a balance and navigate and have an agile approach to it?
Yeah. So, the compliance is a starting point and not the destination. Okay? And it is not wrong to have a checkbox, because it is well said that trust but verify. So you could start with the checkpoint, but don't stop there. Okay? Keep adding risk to that, and keep maturing it. Okay? So there is always a balance between the business, the finance, and the technology. Okay? So that's my.
So Madhuri, quickly to you, because you specifically look at BFSI compliance. So your thoughts on this, and then maybe if Kush would like to add something.
The regulations keep evolving, because if you look at the way the fintech industry has evolved, and there are terminologies now. So there is a finfluencer who's giving advice for free without any registration. It is no surprise that the regulators also have to keep pace, because otherwise whatever strong controls that they have put in place, if they hadn't done it, we would be facing even more cyber threats and cyber crimes, which are happening even now as we speak. And I was just reading this good article by the RBI governor some few days back, where he mentioned that the regulators are the fifth line of defense. So when the first four lines fail, so first is business risk, the second is risk and compliance, third is internal audit, fourth is external audit. When all of that fails, that's when the regulators step in. So I would say that it is very critical for us to have a strong regulatory framework, and it's what keeps our bank account safe.
Good evening, everyone. So Sunil sir mentioned about in the opening note that we want India to become the largest in fintech, right? But if you go with the data, in 2022 alone, as per Tenable, there were 2.29 billion records which were exposed, and India ranked the second in that. So with that data, that means that the number of exposure of the confidential records which is happening, we are on the second, we are in the spotlight. So we need to make sure that industries like fintech, which we are trying to become a leader in the world, we need to make sure that it's not just a checkbox. I'll give you one more instance which happened with me. Last Saturday, I was in the certain head office. I met Mr. Sanjay Bahal, and there was a clear direction not only for the fintech clients but also for the audit firms. They are going to be very strict on the auditing. So if there are only checkbox, it's going to be difficult, and the directions of certain are going to be so strict even for the audit firms that they're going to categorize it into class A, B, and watch list. So every audit firm now are going to make sure that they don't do a very lazy work or thin work. So it cannot be a checkbox now. And if we want to be a leader in fintech, we need to make sure that the compliance is established and maintained. And reiterating to your point also, it is a continuous process, which we tell continuous improvement. That's it.
Great. So I'll quickly move to the next question, sir, for you. So we are looking at new guidelines. They have been enforced on data localization, P2P lending, tokenization, cybersecurity audits, PCI DSS. Compliance has to be in line with that by regulatory bodies. So what shifts in trends are you anticipating occurring in the risk and security compliance practices for the Indian fintechs?
The first shift is acceptance that changes are necessary. So if we need to maintain that leadership position, we need to be on top of technology, and accordingly the compliances has to change. Now, as and when the compliance changes, you'll have to see it as a slight detour and not a lost way. And what really happens there is with every change in compliance, it is a new opportunity, and it is adaptation of newer technologies. So the compliance process will improve, and accordingly the technology will improve. So that's why we have these things like the RegTech and the AI-driven tools. So it spawns other things. So as it was said, like the fintech industry, the UPI is spawning other things like ONDC and AEPS. So accordingly, it will be a complex one. So the shift will be more towards harmonization and automation, and finally go towards the artificial intelligence.
So Naseem, would you like to add here?
I think, let me share one story between me and Navneet. I think we are discussing almost a month ago or a couple of months ago that how we are going to handle this regulatory requirement. Navneet told me, I was thinking to set up a dedicated team who will read every day to RBI and SEBI's website to understand what they are looking for, right? So that is the fact. At the same time, like a joke, Navneet told that every Friday we are getting a new guidelines notification or something related to that, right? So that is what, right? Regulatory is top of it. I think Madhuri also told that same thing, that they are become the fifth line of defense, right? So everybody is understand that thing, that if you want to grow, if you want to I would say top of this business, fintech, and I'm sure all of you are having friends outside of India, and everybody is discussing about the fintech growth in India, right? So if you want to be top of that, there will be, much more, complex things is going to come to you, right? There are state-sponsored cyber attack is going to happen. This fintech organization are capturing so much, critical data about the organization, about the people, and I'm sure all of we know about Cambridge Analytica incident. So those things are already there, right? So if you don't have this, our benchmarking, if you're not increasing, right, in terms of compliance, it's a threat to the organization. It's a threat to the, I would say, it's in a different note. It's a national security threat as well.
So, Ritu, we were also just discussing, and they have rightly mentioned, like a Friday movie, there are policies being defined again, and you just shared that you had to just draft something and come. So, what are the trends and what are the challenges that you are seeing there, in terms of the shift?
I think earlier it used to work is that we always used to go to a bank branch, we used to open that account in order to withdraw or deposit money. It was all physical in nature, and if you look at the transformation now, our account or our money is in our mobile phone. We can access each and everything from our mobile phone. The regulations have evolved in such a manner that there are a lot of technological developments, and on top of that we have seen many fintechs which have come up with new models to access account, to lend from their platform, or to offer n number of payment products, right? Mm-hmm. Everything has moved to a mobile. When we are talking about UPI, which can be accessed from mobile, we are now talking about lightweight payment settlement systems. It is just evolving day by day. What we have seen is the regulator has also picked up that pace. Like we rightly pointed out, right? Every Friday we are seeing a new kind of regulation coming up from the regulator. That is something which we need to keep a pace with, that if we are evolving our technology, our infra, are we also securing it enough so that our customer interest is protected? Do we have enough checks and balances in our system so that if regulator is keeping up the pace, are we also keeping up the pace while we are developing fintech platforms or coming up with new products and information for our customer? Is it secured enough? So some of the checks and balances needs to be implemented at our end. We have to be also keeping the pace on the compliance side equally well with as we do it with business.
True. So Kush, maybe just for you to pitch in here, because you interact with your clients day in and day out, and you're actually seeing the shift happening, and so what's your take on this? And you have been speaking to them, so do you really see that?
I see same thing, like a lot of CISOs whom I go for the audit, they say that the same thing gets repeated time and again, and there are new things which keep coming. And you see the main framework is the ISO 27001, and based on that there are many other regulations which are released, but as part of the compliance team they are actually struggling to find out what new has come and making sure, because there will be a certain auditor, for auditor also it's something new and they're struggling to understand, to show the compliance. So yes, definitely with the every Friday release it's a painful task.
So I think we're going to have this hashtag, Friday release for our session, and maybe everybody could pitch in their thoughts on this. So quickly, he's also just given the right direction, that because the change is so dynamic, so how difficult is it to keep up with this change, and the challenge that you'll face, because you especially look at BFSI compliance, where again, there are so many updates happening. So what is your personal challenge there?
So my personal challenge is keeping abreast of the regulatory changes that keep coming, like not just Friday, sometimes even midweek.
Yes.
And it's not just the regulations. So especially on the SEBI side, we have a lot of SEBI informal guidances. They will penalize somebody else. We have to read it to understand whether it is applicable to us or not. Then there are other guidances that keep coming. There are circulars which keep coming. So on multiple regulations, there are different guidances.
Different for NSE, different for BS.
Correct, absolutely.
And NSD
formats are different. They started with the system audit and the cyber audit. Earlier it used to be just a tick box exercise where everybody just filled it up and mostly nil and whatever submitted. Now they have started reviewing it. They've started penalizing brokers for not doing the right thing. they've started asking about things like a SaaS platform and all, which erstwhile they had absolutely no idea. So for them also it is a catch-up exercise. For us it is even more difficult because many a times there is personal liability. So in a lot of cases, especially on the SEBI side, we see that there is personal liability on the compliance officer. So we have to be extra careful, take care of the business and take care of our own selves.
Ms. Mahesh, if you would like to add something, please.
Yeah, sorry.
So we are still on the checkbox.
Next question.
No, I'm just asking if you would like to add to the challenges in navigating this complex adherences that keep getting updated regularly. So if you want to share some thoughts.
So I think somewhere the next session we're going to have an introduction to UCF. So, but UCF is was conceived in 1992. Now, and the obvious challenge is what is called as a regulatory research. So what are the new things and how is it applicable to us? Then comes the control inventory. What are our existing controls? How do they map to new things? Whether they then when you are done, you will do the gap analysis. Then comes the implementation. So long run process. So now, as I said earlier, all these things are spawning new technologies, and that's where the AI is coming into picture.
Yeah, so you're telling the UCF is going to be there, right, since 1992. But don't you think the UCF needs to be very dynamic in nature with the new Friday releases or midweek releases?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So do you think a compliance team would be able to manage their own UCF, make it dynamic? I'm just trying to understand from your team's view.
It is not possible. As
Not possible.
Navneet gave an advice, so you need a team which is bigger than the IT team to track all this thing.
Yeah. So UCF, which is dynamic and up to date.
Yes. I would love if somebody can do it for me.
Sure, definitely. Navneet, no, sorry.
That's the most subtle advert you've taken out of anybody.
See, this is something is going to be right, and it's all about how exactly you are gaming up in the upper side of the game, right? When you are scaling up, there will be different kind of problem. There will be different kind of problem. There is, I would say, there is altogether different angle, right? All of we are talking about the IQ side, right? What is new is coming, how exactly we are pushing it. There is one more thing we call is EQ, right? How emotionally people are going to accept that changes, right? That is one more thing we have to consider when we are talking about. I think Madhuri little bit touched about it. There is something on the personal, stake as well. There are case in Uber CISO, right? He was get arrested and jail and all these things happened. At the same time, when you are asking something new to do the business, right? How exactly, they are going to implement those things. What is their, they might have a target that they have to reach this revenue, right? How exactly you are going to help it? Sometime what happened, it's look like you are adding one more task layer to them, right? So that is also one thing we have to look into it.
So maybe I will just move to the last question from my side, and then of course we can have more discussions around this. So the thought that has been echoing is that of course there are a lot of duplications happening, with these updates happening. You have a lot of third-party vendors integrated into your systems. You have alignment with a lot of other business processes. So of course there are places where there's a lot of duplication of efforts happening. So how do you address that, and what has been your experience?
Okay. See, should I give a short and simple answer?
No, make it complicated.
Okay. The short and simple answer would be, I would say, Kush and Ayush is there. Hold them back. They will sort it for you. Okay. The other thing is that, see, when you
To record this and share this on social media.
Sure. Why not? See, the other thing is that I would say when we are talking about multiple compliance requirement, multiple certification, that is one requirement. I think Mr. Romani also touched about when you are having a business cross-border, right? The representation of the same data is different, right? If you work for a Fed, if you work for a European national banks, you will see that same data, same requirement, but the presentation will be different. So you should have the base should be ready, and how exactly you are going to present it, it's totally depend on the who is going to consume that data, right? So every regulator have their own requirement, and day by day the penalty amount, that personal stake is there, those things are already coming up. And people who are having regulatory position, I can tell this thing behalf of all of them. Everybody has been I would say everybody's carrying a very high legal risk, right? So that is one thing people need to look into it.
Maybe Ritu, I would just get to you to share your thoughts on this, because you're also briefly discussing this, that you need to see the criticality, prioritize. So how do you avoid or sieve the duplication, and how do you navigate this challenge?
Duplication, especially in the era of fintech, when we are talking about that multiple acquisitions are happening, or multiple products are getting launched, or we are moving to multiple geographies, right? It's very critical, one, to understand that how best we can leverage the technology which we have. At the same time, we can customize it as per the requirements of the specific geography, right? When we are talking about India data localization guidelines, or we are talking about GDPR, can we have same system which can accommodate both the requirements? It's just an example, right? There could be multiple other things. This also reduces the cost as well as a burden to look into multiple products, multiple technologies, and multiple systems. So there is a maintenance cost, there is a people cost, etc., right? So if everything gets streamlined, the processes around these also get streamlined eventually. However, this is all good scenario, right? Everyone wants to achieve and be there, but there are challenges in terms of, at times, a regulation doesn't permit you to have a separate infra or a combined infra at the same time, right? The requirements are so different that you need to rely on a third party which provide those specialized services in that particular geography. So that needs to be kind of accounted for, and at least at process level that needs to be streamlined. So I think we talked about that PPT model where people, process and technology, they have to talk to each other in order to streamline the entire process at any organization level.
So maybe quickly with Madhuri, you also see this duplication happening at SBU levels, or how?
Somewhat, yes. And I've seen this over the last, KYC is a classic example, right? So there used to be like CKYC and KRA.
Absolutely.
But over the years, a lot of representation has happened to the regulators. And if you see the recent master direction, they've agreed to that, and they've kind of allowed REs to have a KYC policy at a group level. Mm-hmm. So these changes will come about. What matters is that we should make that representation, and we see a lot of collaborative effort from their side as well. So they are also very keen to eliminate duplication where possible. And I think that it should be a dialogue across both sides to ensure that that feedback is passed back to the regulators. I think they are more than open to think about something.
So to quickly just understand from you also, you come from a very diverse background in terms of proper banking and now fintech also. So I'm not putting you in a spot. So it's just that to understand that how have you seen that change, and duplication, do you think it's being addressed, or it continues to be a challenge that needs more maybe tools in the market, or how do you see that?
The duplication will continue because there are multiple entities focusing on multiple different things. So they would certainly look at their own objectives, okay? Like NPCI, RBI, and IT Act. So each of them have their own objectives. It will continue to be very diversified. So the solution, in my opinion, is two simple words. So one is strong foundation, second one is harmonization. When I say foundation, I would always look at ISO 27001 adaptation, not necessarily certification. Yeah, as a policy making standard, then adopt
basic hygiene, yes.
Yeah, as a basic hygiene, then adopt a standard like GDPR for data privacy, and then adopt PCI because it is prescriptive. And in all the three cases, I'm saying adopt, not necessarily certify. Okay? And then keep harmonizing the controls. Now, say for example, right now we have implemented PCI with 8 characters, and version 4 says you need to have 12 characters.
And that also complex.
That's along with complexity. Yes. So now, whether or not I'll be asked for it or not. I would upgrade my policy to say 12%.
12.
So I keep harmonizing that. So I take the more stringent of that. So at least I don't have this problem. So when I look at any system component, I know it has to be 12 character password with complexity. So that way, whether I tell the operations team or tell the auditors, it is harmonized.
So, of course, rightly coming to you, Kush, now, because we've heard the challenges and the duplication and the efforts that are going into it. So, what would be your thoughts in terms of, where can the market move and where can the industry look at, easing off this challenge in some way of automation? So, not pitching about Scrat, of course.
No, not at all.
No, I know that, yes.
So what I think is, instead of scrambling with the directives, so many things, there has to be an approach in which there is a one level and which satisfies everything. So where we have all these requirements coming together, and if I know as a compliance team, if I implement this requirement, I get everything implemented. So for example, one of the easiest example to think of is you go for the PCI audit or the SOC 2 audit or the 27001 audit. Every auditor is going to ask you your quarterly access review reports, right? So what do? You come up with some smart SharePoint and we start dumping data there, right? I have a PCI audit. Okay, these share to the auditor directly, correct? So we need to make sure we adopt one single framework like we discussed, UCF, SCF, and then which complies to everything, so that there's not a lot of confusion also. So I'm talking in terms, I've been into auditing more, so I have seen companies how they try to maintain compliance, and again, it's not for the certification, it's for making sure that your information security is there in the organization. Thank you.
So quickly, I'm done with my share of questions. So maybe we could open the forum for questions. And if any of you all have any questions for our experts or for Mr. Navneethan or Ganeshan, you can please direct it to them. I think we have been so explicit with our subject and understanding that we really don't have anybody of you all would like to share anything more or have a conversation or ask? Yeah.
I will. So this was more towards fintech. I want to add a non-fintech example. You might have heard about a couple of months back there was a breach, ransomware attack on Ames Hospital. So fintech is important, but here it's the situation of life and death. The OPD was not operational for many days. So we need to make sure the information security compliance is important for all verticals. We are discussing fintech here, so didn't wanted to divulge more into it, but yes, it's for all, whether it's manufacturing, healthcare, fintech. So this solution, the information security should be there with all the organizations if we have to grow as a country and make name in the global world. Agree?
So thank you so much. That's about it for us from the panel.
Mostly what I was saying is irrespective of the sectors, availability play very significant role, right? I mean, very simple. It's maybe for the 1 hour you cannot access your mobile, then we'll be in the hell, right? Even though it does not have any organization, it does not have any family information, but however, without this mobile, just we cannot operate, right? That is the foremost, the important than anything else in the current world. That's what, irrespective of all. Like, just take in the US, there's a Dish network, right? You are aware. It's like a 3 weeks. Customers, they are able to watch the channel on the TV as well as on the mobile. It's absolutely different, the aspects, right? It is impacting immediately. If it is a money, at least maybe after some time. But it's like entertainment. They're saying like the TV is not working. Then it's impacting your reputation. So now the Dish TV, whatever the 3x plan, they are into minus 10x. It takes longer time to get into the the main road itself. Then they have to fly on the higher wing. So availability play very significant. The second point is, of course, rightly you have mentioned, like in terms of PPT, the major part what we are missing is, I think most of our friends we agree, it's like a governance is missing. where like there is a separate complaints team, they do the audit. I mean, it's not finding anyone, but just a separate CISO team does something, CIO team does something, there's a technology team does something, right? That's like a centralized one, how you're going to make it up. That's a governance which covering all the PPT will help, to meet the next level on this.
So just to add to that, so do you think it's a decision which should come from the business leaders?
No, the business leaders, they might not aware. That's the problem,
So
right?
would that work if the awareness is created towards them and then it becomes like a business decision making?
Exactly. This is like, it has to flow from maybe CISO, CIO to the CEO to make him aware, like what are the things. Then from there, just we have to make a horizontal flow, like how we can take it forward. That's what it is most of the, because some people will say it's like I'm one of the employees. Whatever you say as a CEO, I'll sell. But it's not the case, right? What CISO says, like it has to be make them aware. Like we cannot break our head saying like the CEO doesn't understand. Then it is an advantage, right? If you take I picked up, if you see my career, I picked up as a Fintech. Because Fintech is, we get more support from CEO. Because he push it saying that, hey, just like I have RBI audit, I have SEBI audit. It's like on the name of them, I can play all around and all this stuff. I can hire it. Just maybe you don't believe it. Like I hired 20 plus interns. Out of the 10, I have kind of just only on the intern side actually. It's like horizontally, we have 11 entity. In Grow alone, we have 11 entity. And it's like amazing work, just, just we have done it actually. So that aspect's, it's a value addition. Fintech is very pleasure to work. Because you may not to drive anything. By default, budget will come to your bucket.
I think the conversations are never ending here. We will need to just make way for the next 2 sessions quickly. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much to each one of you to take your valuable time out and be here and share your valuable insights. Thank you so much. Thank you.